December National Signing Day fast approaches, Iowa's 2023 class really taking shape. We've got transfer portal additions. We talked about Eric Alcade McNamara. They could be getting more here in the next week, potentially. We'll save that for maybe a different conversation. But with signing day fast approaching also comes the possibility of recruits flipping. And Iowa has already had that happen once. David Caulker, 2023 defensive lineman David Caulker, flipping recently from Iowa to Iowa State. Why is David flipping? Why the change from being a Hawkeye to being a Cyclone? Why wouldn't anybody want to play on Phil Parker's defense? I've heard people say that. Well, we'll talk about it in a moment and what it means for Iowa's class. But first, I want to tell you about Ascent Nutrition. I talk about them almost daily. Their Ascent coffee, it's great stuff. Mold and mycotoxin free. It's being featured on some major cable networks, CNN, Fox Business, PBS. This is great stuff, folks. It's changing the coffee industry. Visit goascentnutrition.com. Use that code Hawkeyes for 15% off your total order via Ascent Nutrition, and of course, courtesy of us here from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Appreciate Lance Shuttler and the guys down at Ascent Nutrition. So again, as I mentioned, 2023 defensive lineman David Caulker, who was previously committed to Iowa, has officially flipped to Iowa State. Now, this happened a few weeks back, happened during the season, and it just kind of got lost amid the busy period of content here from the Hawkeye of the Storm and news across the Iowa football landscape. So first of all, let's address the potential reasons for this. And I had a discussion with 2023 commit Ontario Thompson, who's the transfer in from Iowa Western. By the way, congratulations to Ontario and the Reavers of Iowa Western winning a national championship yesterday. Congratulations to those guys. A lot of hard work paying off, and we look forward to seeing Ontario in Iowa City. He's actually visiting this weekend. So commit Ontario Thompson will be in Iowa City over the next few days. But I had a conversation with him about David Caulker because he knows David. He's had conversations with David. And I actually had this conversation not long after David Caulker decommitted. I believe it was just a couple of days after he flipped to Iowa State. And Ontario was kind of surprised by this as well. But he did make sure to point out that he had a recent conversation with David. And it seemed to Ontario that David really felt a special connection with Iowa State and its coaches. And that somewhat makes sense. Of course, Des Moines is closer to Ames than it is to Iowa City. Don't know if David grew up an Iowa State fan or an Iowa fan, but I'm guessing he grew up an Iowa State fan, and maybe that information's out there somewhere. But the point is, even throughout his pledge to Iowa, it sounds like he's had some heartstrings tugged at by the Cardinal and Gold up in Ames. Now, you could also reason that this is purely a result of numbers. You look at Iowa's 2023 class. I like what they've done with defensive linemen, and Ontario Thompson's a perfect example. Here's a kid who's gotten a real solid year in at the JUCO level, wins a national championship, and is probably going to compete for playing time immediately. All right, he's a big kid at 6'3", 300 pounds. He runs fast, explosive off the line. You've got Maddox Borcherding Johnson, the signee from Norwalk. He's been locked in for quite some time. Again, not implying that these guys are the reason why David Caulker decided to flip to Iowa State, but I do see David Caulker probably being an inside guy at the collegiate level. I'm certainly no recruiting guru or expert or a defensive line expert. I'm sure Kelvin Bell would be able to tell you where they projected him. I see him playing inside, given his body type. I mean, Caulker's listed right now, according to 247 Sports, at 6'4", 260, 256, I guess, to be exact. My point is, I was a little bit curious on if the decision from Caulker was influenced by Ontario Thompson's decision to commit. And I know Ontario pointed out to me, well, David's projected as an end guy. I don't know about that. I'm not saying Ontario's wrong, but I kind of have always thought that David Caulker would end up being a D tackle at Iowa. So that could be a factor. We know as it relates to edge rushers, Iowa has a couple of really good ones coming in. Chase Brackney, the kid from Cherry Creek in Inglewood, Colorado. Kenneth Merriweather, who is quite the athlete on offense and defense up at Martin Luther King High in Detroit. Those guys are going to compete for time at D end. The advantage you have at Iowa, as you and I both know, Iowa does like to run sometimes 8 or 9 guys along that defensive line, and depth has been a strength. Now, there might be guys leaving, and there likely will be guys leaving, right? But we're still waiting on decisions from guys like Joe Evans, guys like Noah Shannon. Obviously, Logan Lee is an upperclassman. We have reason to believe those guys will be gone, if not right now, in a year or two. And I wouldn't expect David Caulker probably to even get immediate playing time at Iowa State. He's probably a bit of a project, although he had some high major offers. So I don't know that that's the reason why. Iowa likes to run guys, so you're going to have an opportunity to get playing time. I don't really think that's probably what it is. It sounds like there was just that natural pull, as much as some people don't want to accept that. Some kids just feel more at home places other than Iowa. And my guess is that, again, if Iowa State weren't in the picture, that he would come to Iowa and probably end up playing here, maybe be a rotational guy. Maybe he'd be a star in a few years. Who knows? Again, he had some good offers out of high school. Minnesota, another team that had offered. Missouri offered David Caulker. Nebraska. So he had some high major offers. And, it's a blow to some extent. I always think it's better if these flips, these decommitments and flips come well before signing day, which in this case, David Caulker's decommitment did come well before signing day. It gives the Iowa coaches an opportunity to kind of regroup and reassess things from a recruiting perspective. I don't think Iowa is fazed by this. Not saying that David's not a loss, but again, with what they've done with the two edge guys and with Ontario Thompson and Borcherding Johnson, I think they've got plenty of depth there. And let's not forget, too, they could always flip somebody on signing day. I haven't heard any rumblings of any specific defensive lineman that may occur with, but you never know. A lot can happen as we get closer and closer to signing day, 6 days out. So the bottom line is, I listed David Caulker here on your banner as a defensive lineman because I just don't know that he is a defensive end. He could end up being a D tackle, which helps you at Iowa because it's going to give you more opportunity to be on the field. But I just think there was that pull from Iowa State, and sometimes you just can't explain those things. But best wishes to David Caulker. No hard feelings from this Hawkeye fan. I understand the process and growing up as close as he did to Ames. No reason to think that wasn't a big factor in his decision to flip to Iowa State. For those people that say, well, once you commit, you should stick with your commitment. Well, it's better than signing and then opting out of your national letter of intent. That's what I would say. And, again, he gave Iowa some time to kind of regroup here. And, hey, that'll produce another storyline in the Iowa State rivalry whenever a recruit picks one school or the other here in the state of Iowa. That's always an interesting storyline. And he's an in-state kid, so that will fuel some fire there as well. Appreciate you tuning in for another segment here. Wanted to hop on and discuss this because I hadn't gotten an opportunity to talk about it since it occurred here a few weeks ago. Signing day is fast approaching. By the way, folks, live signing day special next Wednesday from 1 to 5 p.m. Central Time. All right, live for 4 straight hours. It's going to be fun. Stick right here. Turn notifications on next Wednesday, the 21st of December from 1 to 5 p.m. We've got Iowa recruits coming on the show. We're going to take your calls, take your chats. It's going to be a fun afternoon. And, of course, we've got Iowa post-game with Coach Gary Close coming up this Saturday following Iowa and Southeast Missouri State. We'll talk to you soon.